All right, we're live. Samuel, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, Grim. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this will be good. It'll be. I have a feeling you're going to help me understand some stuff about what's going on in Canada and the woke stuff. And
I hope so.
yeah. So what? I mean, we might as well start right at the top. Like, why are you the illegitimate scholar?
Yeah, so illegitimate scholar. It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek name. It came out because I was first. I was in the Marine Corps, in the U.S. Marine Corps, right out of high school. Went to school to be a history teacher, and I did complete my bachelor's program, and I got certified to teach. Did my whole teaching load and everything, and I just, for a number of reasons, I really didn't like it. I didn't like the limitations and everything, so I decided that I was gonna do a show where I just talked about the social studies stuff I wanted to talk about. A lot of that being anthropology. A lot of indigenous stuff is what I like to do. I love the history and contemporary issues. And I was once accused of anti-Semitism because I said that we should talk about the genocide of Native Americans as much as we talk about the Holocaust. Stuff like that. So I decided that illegitimate scholar was the right name because I wanted to be a scholar, but illegitimate in the sense that I'm not legitimized by any traditional social institution. I'm just here on my own, well, not on my own, but, here with guys like you making content like this
So you
about the
decided not
content
to
that I want
not
to
to do
talk
the
about.
teaching route. You just decided to do it on your own, kind of. So what were some of the blocks in your way with teaching history?
Um, well, it's very regimented, right? Especially in a public school. They had me teach in a government class, and that was one of the classes I was teaching. I taught a government class for 3 months, and the entire time I taught this government class, I didn't say the word lobbyist. Everything was chosen for me. I was teaching them about gerrymandering, and I was teaching them what was in the curriculum. But it was just theory. It was like talking about how bills go through into laws, and that stuff's just not important. It's not important when that's not really how it works, but that's how it's taught. And I came to understand the education system a little bit better being inside of it. Not perfectly. I came to understand who was in the education system, what they're selecting for. And later on, I ended up doing an episode. I don't know if you saw this, but I did an episode about the roots of the education system in the United States specifically, but it's essentially the same throughout North America and most of the Western world. But specifically in the United States, how the education system came about, first with the Prussian model, which I don't know if you're familiar with it, but then people talk about the Prussian model, but they don't talk as much about this very real change that happened in the early 1900s with the Rockefeller and Carnegie and Ford General Education Boards and the Carnegie Institute and organizations like that formed education in the image that they wanted. And that's where our modern education system comes from.
And when was that?
So the General Education Board, most of this stuff was happening in the 1910s. There was a big, most of the stuff happened in the 1910s. I can, if you want me to, if you want to get into that, I can pull up some quotes about it.
No, just curious as to where the timing was. It really seemed like the late 1800s, the early 1900s was a huge shift.
Yeah, this is the time sometimes called the Gilded Age, and that's very important, the time of robber barons. And that kind of didn't go away because all these rich guys, these institutions that they created, these organizations, these social institutions. I talk a lot about social constructs and what I do. That's a big thing in anthropology, is like these social constructs, these organizations, they were created for a specific purpose. They were created with guidelines in place, and then people fill out those organizations, and they basically take on a mind of their own, and they just function in the way that they've been written to function. So when they were first started, they were started with these intentions of controlling education, of attacking unions, which they did very successfully, of forming education literally explicitly to produce workers for factories in the early 20th century United States. And those organizations are still around today. And they explicitly, there are some quotes from some of the people in the NEA, the National Education Association. This is the largest, it's the largest teaching union in the United States. It's also the largest union in general. And that's an organization that was formed entirely, it was formed earlier, but it was taken over in the 1910s. There were quotes from the people that were in it at the time who were talking about how these new Rockefeller-funded people, these people that were funded by Rockefeller and Carnegie, they had infiltrated all of the universities, all of the teaching colleges through financing, through donating money to the universities. These boards that were created by Carnegie and Rockefeller, they created a system, they implemented that system, and they essentially controlled a supermajority of the education in the United States, which meant that the people that became in the NEA, the National Education Association, they were amenable to what those organizations wanted and their goals.
Right.
And they took over the union, and they made it what it is today.
And,
So
and today, it's today.
I mean, when
Go
I
ahead,
look
Darren.
at the problem, to me seems to be the government still, because why should the government have a monopoly on education that can be infiltrated by billionaires or millionaires, or whatever we're calling them? You know, that shouldn't have fucking happened, and the union thing shouldn't have happened either. You know, so that this other entity has so much power over our personal sovereignty that it can be manipulated in such a way that we can't weasel our way out from underneath it.
Right. 100%. Yeah. And even today, I mean, if you, I don't know how it is in Canada with this, but today in the United States, I mean, even like Democrats and Republicans, Democrats are even 50% in support of school choice. Republicans are overwhelmingly in support of school choice, but still the legislature, it just doesn't happen in most states anyway, because of the power of the teaching union and the people in important positions and how they feel about it.
Oh, it's powerful here. I mean, the head of the, did you see what happened, Darren, recently at the Million March? That head of the union was like showing his support for Antifa. I mean, he was actually like on the other side of it. And I think he was the head of the teachers union. He was the head of a big union. I was like, this dude is the head of a union. Like he's trying to claim that they're anti-fascist. Are you fascist? They're anti-fascist. Like the name is everything. I mean, it was unbelievable. Did you see that?
No, I didn't. Which teachers union?
That's what I'm wondering. I thought it was, or which union? I thought it was the teachers union, but he was right in the middle of the protest.
Different ones, like there's the Ontario one. That I know, like the Ontario teachers union is the ones that own Chinook Mall.
I think it was in Toronto. It was just alarming to see the head of the union in the middle of this protest on the side and outwardly supporting Antifa.
So it's a counter protest.
What?
Counter protesting?
Yes.
How did the Million March go?
Well, I mean, it was. I think it was successful. I mean, for the most part,
there was a lot of people in my like personal Facebook world that I seen posting about it that kind of caught me off guard. You know, like just a bunch of people I went to high school with that were like, "Hey, who's participating in this? The kids aren't going to school tomorrow," and I was like, "Huh."
That's awesome. Megan Murphy they tried to assault her and the cops had to shut it down. She had to run away.
That was in Victoria, right?
I think so. Yeah. Obviously, it would happen in British Columbia.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just gross. I mean, one little violent thing, and then the cops were like, "No, we're shutting the whole thing down." Like it's and of course violence from the protester side. So their tactics work. You know, they just go one rogue protester, and then the whole thing gets shut down. It's disgusting. And if it was the other way around, they would do everything they could to keep it going. I mean, the whole thing is captured. The unions are captured. The cops are captured. The courts are captured. It's very strange to see.
I talked to the police today. They found my license plate.
Oh, wow. Where was it?
Oh, on a stolen white truck for sure. Guaranteed. I don't know where it was. He didn't tell me. He just said they recovered my license plate.
That's the word they use.
On a white truck. But my neighbor had it on the camera of them running out to their white truck. I guarantee they stole a white truck in one neighborhood and then drove over to this neighborhood looking for a clean plate. It's messed up, man. BC is lost. BC's lost. It's over. I don't see how their healthcare system is in total collapse. It's unbelievable.
Washington State seems to be the same. My sister lives there, and it's a mess. It's an absolute mess.
My sister lives in BC. Yeah, it's getting very difficult. Yeah, I mean even the city of Vancouver with all the open drug use and stuff it's very strange. It's spreading out all over the city.
Seattle and Portland are the same way.
Yeah, so they're worried about their rights. Like, you know, they don't want to impose restrictions on making the the addicts use in the safe injection site areas. So they let them just go on the street in front of everybody's place. So that's okay. Don't worry about the rights of the people that actually like work their ass off to own their homes. But
yeah,
and I'm an addict, so I'm like, I understand sort of both sides. Well, I try to understand both sides.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not the best for anybody. It's bad for everybody. It's I would call it anarcho-tyranny. I don't know if you've heard that term. I assume.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
Anarcho-tyranny.
Anarcho-tyranny. Yeah, it's the obviously it's oxymoronic in a certain way, but anarcho-tyranny is like the idea that through state-sanctioned anarchy in specific cases, like in the case where they shut down the truckers' convoy, or they'll use the FBI or other intelligence agencies to shut down parents who are going to school board meetings, but they'll allow mass destruction of cities. So they'll allow anarchy to take place in certain places, and then they'll criminalize people that are defending it against it, like the kid in Kenosha, and then that Marine in New York City who had stopped the guy on the subway. And then, you live in fear through them not enforcing the laws selectively. It's anarcho-tyranny, and it's...
that's so interesting because it's also happening on a real subtle level. Like, so two people I know, it's happening in their rental buildings or the buildings that they own condos in. And they've got now management companies that are obviously woke and they're pushing the bigger agendas. And they come in with all these new rules and these new laws. So, it's all about like pets and about, you can't be aggressive or abusive to people.
No meat.
You can't be what?
You can't have meat. Sean has seen some apartments in Calgary that you can't have meat.
Calgary,
you can't eat meat in the apartment.
What?
I'm telling you, I didn't believe it either.
So this is a great, though. This is even like more extreme than my example.
Before that, I like techno feudalism.
Techno feudalism?
Yeah.
What's that?
That saying. I like that. That's my word for where we're at. And because we're not doing capitalism, we're not doing democracy. It's some weird techno feudalism. There's a bunch of powerful houses at play and at war with each other in the background. We don't know what's going on. I mean, we're just the fucking plebs from back in the, they didn't know what the fuck was going on either. They were going to war because of this motherfucker. Like, okay, let's go get him. But then you find out it's actually because of that. Right. And they're all cousins and they're all fucking each other.
I was just listening to your guys' episode that I really enjoyed on elitism. And you were talking about the, back in the Roman times, how there was a shadow government like in the back, which is obviously like known today, but like people didn't know that at the time. And that's something I never really thought about, is that they didn't know at the time what was really going on. There's a certain level of like, you can understand things in the past more. Like presidency bias is a real thing, and you can try to get rid of it, but it's really hard to do entirely.
I have something really interesting to build on that. I'm really interested to see what you think about that, but I want to get back to this subtle, and I think this is what's happening. It's the anarcho-tyranny is so these management companies like the one Darren's talking about. So all of a sudden they're coming in with these new like 2030 agenda stuff or whatever. And they're saying, you can't even use your public balcony anymore. That people used to go out there and party. People used to go out there and barbecue food and have a bunch of visitors over and then party. And there's like this huge balcony with a view of the city, for example. And now, they'd smoke out there, whatever. Now you can't even smoke. You can't even have visitors out there without you present. Like all these laws and all these rules. You can't be abusive to people. Obviously, there's all those normal sort of social justice rules, which some of them are obviously understandable. But, and then there's like the whole pets. Now you're not allowed to drink in your common areas. Like there's all these new rules coming out. Yet they'll allow people just to steal shit out of stores and not do anything about it. Like, it's very strange how, now we have to follow all these little rules in our living quarters, and yet you're allowed to just go out and rob a store and not get anything to happen to you if it's under $1,000. I mean, or just nothing happens to bike thieves or to car thieves.
The bike thief isn't listening to the rules in the apartments either.
Yeah.
And maybe we
but I mean,
learn a little something.
But the problem is they'll kick you out, right? I mean, I've seen the letters of warning about these crazy somebody was smoking, he threw his smoke out. He was vaping and he threw his smoke out of onto the ground. Warning letter. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
And yet, and yet the crime is rampant everywhere else. I mean, it's really getting to the point where you just don't. I don't even just. That's why we're moving. I don't want to live for a landlord anymore. I can't do it.
Yeah, seriously. I fully agree. I'm glad I own a house, which is really hard to do.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So speaking of the history, have you heard about this this Roman Empire trend that's going on?
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you?
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful.
You want to describe it? And I don't know if Darren's heard about it, but I just find it fascinating.
So I mean, the idea is like I think it started the first time I saw it was like there was a young woman and she like it was like a TikTok. She's like in her face, she's taking the video like. So I just like heard that men think about the Roman Empire all the time. I asked my boyfriend how often he thinks about the Roman Empire, and he said every day. And then there's all these videos of women asking guys like, how long do you think about the Roman Empire? And it's like even in other countries, like it was mostly like Americans and Canadians. And then I see a video of like an Irish guy, like an older Irish dude, and his daughter asked him like, how often do you think about the Roman Empire? And he's like, oh, every other day. Like, it's like, oh, even you. Okay. Like, yeah.
Oh yeah. And they're freaking, and the girls are freaking out.
Subtle trolls. Yeah. Sounds like a bunch of subtle trolls.
No. I mean, what the point is that men are thinking about these sort of global big picture situations and what happened in the past because they're trying to figure out how to protect for the future. I mean, but the girls.
How often do you guys think about the Roman Empire?
Well, quite a bit, a couple times a week, probably, a few times a week.
Christ, you guys
it's a little different because we're doing shows on it all the time.
I never think about that. I mean, I've read about all those.
You just brought up like what? That's techno feudalism. You didn't make you think of the Roman Empire.
Rome wasn't a feudal system. Rome was an empire. A feudal system is a bunch of houses that are feuding with each other.
You talk to.
I know a lot about Rome because I read a bunch of books on Rome. I like Rome, but I don't. I'm not thinking about it all the time. Like, when I think about it, but it ain't every other day. It's not even once a week.
Okay, you're thinking of empires all the time, though.
I wouldn't even.
You just made up a name. You just made up your own name for what's going on.
I stole that from someone. I don't know where. I read that, but I did not make that up. I cannot take credit for that. That was not made up.
I think you just tried to take credit about 5 minutes ago.
No, I didn't. I said I like techno feudalism.
Oh, I thought you said you said
I read it.
He likes the name, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I like the name. I ain't taking credit for that shit. And I ain't thinking about the Roman Empire either. I'm thinking about hunting and fucking sometimes. This is crazy to me.
The point was that the males have a very different like sort of daily thought process than the females,
I didn't know other guys thought about it this much. Like I think about socially constructed political organizations all the time. So I think about the Roman Empire like almost every day. I mean, I think about the Incan Empire almost every day.
I don't think the Roman Empire was even real.
Oh yeah, are you one of these Tartaria guys?
I'm not a Tartaria guy. No, I just think it's not it's all based on like one dude's book, man. Like the whole most of it is racist. What's his name? Fucking starts with a P, Pluto something or other. But like most of what we know about Rome is not. There's not a ton. It's not as much as you think when you really dig into it.
Plutarch.
That's it. Yeah.
There's a lot of
copies of Plutarch, from what I can tell.
No, there's a lot of material culture. I mean, there's a lot of like coins. There's coins and buildings and stuff. I mean, I don't know.
I think they hijacked that shit and told us because it's like that's the closest thing that our system is sort of based on is that Roman sort of oligarchy. It makes us okay with oligarchy, a little bit okay with empire. And, you guys are thinking about it all the fucking time. I mean, clearly it was the perfect fucking ploy. I mean, it's like the Game of Thrones, but for history books.
I'm thinking about this really differently now. This is a new perspective for me.
Rome was buried under fucking 50 feet of fucking dirt to 80 feet of dirt when Mussolini dug that shit out. Where the fuck did that shit come from, man? Rome's only supposed to be 2,000 years old. The end of the empire is on like 2,240 AD, something like that, if I'm not mistaken.
476 of the West, but
so I thought 476 is like when it goes from a quote unquote democracy back into an empire.
No, 476 was the collapse of Western Rome. But yeah,
there's no fucking timeline in there for Mussolini to have to fucking excavate anything. Where the fuck does the timeline? And I'm not a Tartaria guy.
You're a mud flooder. It sounds like
I can get into. I'm not a mud flooder either. I'm telling you, a fucking timeline discrepancy.
I've heard of this as well.
Rome is older than 2,000 years or younger. I don't know where the timeline's at, but it ain't the timeline that they're fucking telling us. Either some shit went down between now and then in the last 2,000 years, which I'm not ruling out, or they're fucking lying because they're excavating shit down where, you know, maybe the Romans were on top of each other, but the Roman Empire supposedly isn't around long enough to be building on top of each other or to even have its own ruins, right? I mean, it's a thousand years, couple thousand years isn't that long in the scheme of things.
Yeah.
And then you go to Egypt and you see that mud brick shit. I mean, whatever the last Romans were, they fucking sucked at building shit compared to what the first Romans were doing. There's a clear delineation, or sorry, that's not the right word.
Yeah, I think that's
no,
right.
No, it's not delineation. There's a clear devolution in constructability that goes all the way from ancient Egypt to modern Egypt to fucking ancient Rome to modern Rome to now, in my opinion, at least. So I don't think the Roman Empire is fucking real. I think that's the fake history that they're using to make it okay. So because now it's better than that a little bit, but we're still on that same timeline. I don't know what they're up to. I'm not pretending to have the answers to that. I'm just saying I don't believe that what they're telling us is fucking true.
All right. I don't know enough. This is the first I'm hearing of this. I'll have to do some more, but
well, yeah, it's interesting. I was going to ask you about that in general. Like what have you come across sort of historical stuff that you're, because you know, being an illegitimate scholar and stuff, are you coming across any history that you're kind of going, well, that doesn't make sense because it doesn't add up with this or that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Graham Hancock guy, and I know you are as well. I've read a few of his books. I've listened to every single episode him and Randall Carlson have done on Joe Rogan like 3 or 4 times. So yeah, there's definitely some stuff like that, and you know, I'm big in anthropology and archaeology, so there's a lot of stuff. I mean, there's admixture of like Australian DNA in like the west coast of South America. There's some weird stuff with the Aztecs, and you know, I was reading this crazy idea recently that the Aztecs were like the result of and this was around the same time they found the aliens, which essentially were, I guess, in Peru and then moved to Mexico. But like the Aztecs and their blood sacrifices were like some warped cargo cult remnant of aliens coming in. Like there's a bunch of crazy theories about that. But even in our lifetimes, you know, in our lifetimes, all of ours, when we were kids, or you know, when I was a kid, and there was the idea of Clovis first, that people had only been in the Americas for 12,000 years. And even mainstream anthropology says that that's not true anymore. They don't really know how long it is, but there's some insane stuff. There's been some precision needles found in Siberia, precision drills like that are dated to be like 80,000 years old.
Wow.
And there's also the fact that in archaeology, and this is something a lot of people don't know, but archaeology, which is, you know, digging up human remains and stuff, you know, in most cases, archaeology is like, it's layers, and the farther down you go, the older it is. So when people have preconceived notions about how old something is, they just don't dig lower. So they just wouldn't find it. So, you know, there's a bunch of stuff. Another thing, I mean, the rainforest stuff, the Brazilian rainforest stuff. Are you familiar with that at all?
Yeah. All the cities, thousands of cities that have been sort of basically grown over.
Right. And they're looking for them with LIDAR and the Terra Preta with the technology that created this stuff. I mean, they don't even understand how the Polynesians got to the islands that they were. I know I just gave you bullet points of a few different things, but there's a lot of stuff like this where, I mean, even in our lifetimes, like I said, like the timelines of very important events have shifted. And the idea that just now we're correct on everything it's not logical.
Right.
I don't know which particular things are wrong. I know that people have been in the Americas for a lot longer, and likely there are other influences besides the 1, 2, or 3 like waves of people that were supposed to have emigrated across the land bridge.
Yeah. Well, Darren, you were mentioning Mussolini. Is that because you've seen those weird pics where like they went into this place and excavated and they dug up like 20 or 30 feet of dirt?
I think it was up to 80 feet in some places. Yeah, there's a bunch of pictures that that could be fake too. I don't know, but you know, by their own, I'm using their own stuff that they're publishing.
So what
And
is
in
your
full
what?
disclosure, when I was reading the books on Rome, I almost bought a gladius. I seen, you know, because it would be cool to be badass with a sword. I mean, there's just something gangster about being able to swing a sword around. I'd like to see that shit. But I want to go to like see some real badass sword shit, you know, not like those dorks beating the shit out of each other and it just looks terrible. That would be kind of neat to go to too, maybe. They had one here this summer. We should have went and checked it out, Graham.
I've been to those Renaissance fairs.
But they were like they kicked the shit out of each other, but it's still just the swordsmanship is shit. You know what I mean? Like it looks fun. It'd be fun to beat up your buddies with a fake sword, but
they use it like a club, though.
Yeah, it'd be pretty cool to see some real gangster fucking swordsmanship. You know, I feel like that's a lost art.
Yeah, except in Star Wars movies, I guess.
So what do you think about these these sort of digging up all this mud, like tens of feet of dirt and mud in these places that and there doesn't seem to be like an explanation of, oh, it was this volcanic eruption or this sort of flood that happened.
I'd have to look at that actual thing. I did not know how deep. I didn't know that about Mussolini. I haven't seen anything about this, but it would surprise me that they would ever even dig that deep to try to do that. But it would. There's things about the soil, and it depends on when it was excavated, but there's things about the soil that they could figure out some sort of dating method. And you know, it could be 80 feet. If there's some sort of localized mudslide rather than, you know, a huge event, then there would be variations in the height of the dirt that's above a specific area. But 80 feet is a lot.
Yeah.
I just don't know why they would ever know, especially in the 1930s or 40s, how or where to dig. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. It looks like Darren's looking up something there.
I'm trying to see if I can find some pictures. Yeah.
On the subtlety, I mean, a lot of the when I say they, I mean the ruling class, whatever, the same people who are controlling education. It's all you know, it's all similar people if it's not the same. If they can control the right people, if they can use social constructs of public schools, government schools, colleges, and then institutions to give people certification as well as give them tenure and things like that, they can control what information is being said in a very decentralized manner, which makes it a lot easier. Because if you create somebody with the subtle ideas in their head, where you know that out of 1,000 professors, 800 of them are going to push your right idea, then you don't have to necessarily force people to do things, because the people in the right positions, they're inclined already to support your position because you made sure of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's one of those old pictures. What happened? God damn it. Oh, yeah, I don't know how much is here, but these are just some pictures from that era. Now I don't know where it went. See, that didn't work out. There's some pictures here, though, you see? From the 1920s. So I don't know. I'm not really prepared, but anyway,
something to look into.
It's definitely something to look into, because I remember seeing a bunch of pictures of like a bunch of soldiers, and it looked like soldiers were doing it in downtime. It looked like from the pictures. It was actually like right in around World War II.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with the specifics of it, but this got brought up recently by Jimmy Corsetti, as a lot of the archaeology that the Nazis were doing. And I've looked into Soviet archaeology a little bit, but all the different traditions, the different academic traditions in different countries and different eras, you know, they all have their own biases, but they all can tell you something that you didn't know, and they all look at things in a different way. So there's a lot to be learned from anything that any different country did. And today, everything is so homogenized.
Yeah, but it does make sense. It was the Nazis or Mussolini at that point, because, you know, there wasn't a cult interest with Hitler and some of his guys. I mean, it goes deep, and I've been hearing this a lot lately. For some reason, it keeps popping up now, and I mean, they were looking for artifacts and stuff like that. Like, that seems like it wasn't a conspiracy theory. Like, he was literally looking for ancient wisdom in places, and also sort of communicating with, you know, the other world, let's say. So it wouldn't surprise me if they went deep, digging 80 feet deep to find the bottom of whatever ancient sort of structures down there. You know, that I feel like they would do it more than sort of the West that has sort of more overt materialistic sensibility.
Yeah, and that was part of, like, I think it was a part of a greater effort by both. Well, Mussolini was more concentrated on the Roman Empire, I think, but I think the Nazis were very concentrated on the concept of the Indo-Aryan, you know, the Indo-Aryan, Indo-European and Indo-Aryan history, and the, like, going back and back and back in time and finding a common root. And I've conceptualized this myself, and I haven't seen anybody else do this and make this connection. I'm sure someone else has, but this type of idea of the Nazis had, or they seemed to have, was sort of a pan-Indo-Aryan state, was kind of what it seems like they were trying to do. And I've thought about this, conceptualized this recently as within the context of the time where these other people were trying to create pan-Latin American states, pan-Asian states, pan-African states, all of these movements. They were movements that died, that existed right after the nation state era of the late 1700s into the 19th century. And once we start going into the 20th century, each of these places has some pretty significant movements, every continent, every large region. And all of these are, you know, 1 billion, 500 million, more than 1 billion people in them. But there were real efforts to unite them into these pan country states. And the fact that kind of seems to be denied, that was an aspect of it, or at least not talked about, is something that I've been thinking about a lot recently in regards to the Nazis.
Yeah, weird how this person was saying they used you know, a lot of Theosophy's work on the root races and stuff like that too, and they kind of were going down that Theosophy way.
I'm
I've
actually
been
not
called an
familiar.
anti-Semite too for suggesting that Jews might be running the world. So
Yeah,
you know, it's
Yeah.
tough out there. I mean, I'm
It is.
1.9% Jewish.
I think
kind
I'm like
again?
6%.
What kind again? Dan?
Ashkenazi.
Ashkenazi.
Best
Yeah,
kind.
that's the one.
The kind running the world. But I didn't. No one asked me what I thought, because I got some ideas, you know, but I don't want to implement them because there's going to be problems downstream. You know, that's the thing, is I don't want any part of running anything, because even my best fucking things are going to have problems downstream. I mean, it's best to just let things go in their own. This whole fucking society market thing is all just made by a bunch of like backdoor deals. And if you were running strings from this guy to that guy to China, we're going to do this, we're going to bring, you know, it's just this intricate system that you can't get too much regulation or government oversight into, or it's going to fucking break. I mean, I think it probably already broke, but I don't know where I was going with that.
Complex system theory is a real thing. It's gets very, very complex, I think. And you know, I like to look at the elites and look at the people. I mean, the people that we see are elites are like, you know, there's a certain level, and that's like, you know, Bush's, Biden, you know, the Bushes, the Obamas, the Kennedys, whatever. And then there's another layer where, you know, people like Bill Gates, even in another layer deeper, you go into Epstein. But then, I mean, there's things like the Rothschilds, which just don't get talked about that much. And it's hard for me to think that, okay, so looking at the elites and how they operate, number one, like in my life, you know, I'm one person. I don't have that many resources. I do what I can with what I can. And, you know, but I'm in a first world country. Compare that to somebody in a third world country, and their concept of what they do is like entirely different. The amount of resources they have available to them and their community are different. But you have places in Haiti where people are killing each other over like $20, $30. I assume, you know, these types of things are happening in the world. Lots of violence for very small amounts of things. But then think about the worldview of somebody who's at the top of this. And like somebody who's at the very, very top, somebody who's above Bill Gates, who's above people like that, or even just Bill Gates himself. The level of money and influence they're dealing with, it's a completely different world than ours. It really is a completely different world. And what I notice a lot in the elites is that traditional patronage networks, traditional like family patronage networks, are used a lot more, because that's essentially like all they can do to trust each other. And these are systems that you would see in feudalism. So, you know, techno feudal.
Yeah, now start looking at like what seem to be arranged marriages.
Right. Exactly. I mean, what is Jared Kushner doing? Right. Like that's an arranged situation. I mean, maybe it's out of
Or
love
what
or
about
whatever.
the Clinton kid? Or what? No, it ain't out of love. No fucking way. Jesus Christ. Oh.
No, I don't know. I don't know is what I'm saying. I can't definitely say it. It definitely is like elites marry other elites, right?
So there are a lot of coincidences all the way down. You know, none of them just fell in love with like the waitress one time, or you know, nothing. The maid, nothing. I mean,
well, if they get Princess, if they do, they just get Princess Died. You know?
Yeah.
Or I mean, look what happened to Harry, right? For fucking, I mean, and she's even kind of famous, you know. She ain't street, you know, she ain't my type, but she ain't like gutter trash. But they still kicked him out.
Right. Or like Edward prior to World War II. They didn't like that. He
doesn't want to fuck his cousin.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, they make it seem like they're very modern and everything, but they're not. You got to keep it in the family. I mean, these people believe in the genes and everything.
I think what you're getting at is it's so ingrained, and it's been ingrained for a while, that it's a completely different perception. It's a completely different view. Like they view, you know, the unwashed masses as something completely different. You know, I mean, I even heard Naomi Wolf talk about a party she was at where there was some like Yale graduates, I guess, and they're thinking the same way. I mean, I think it's even, I think that type of thinking can go down to even somebody that's from, you know, would you say patronage as in like family errors and stuff like that? Is that what you mean by that?
It's not just family networks, but yeah. So those would be called kinship networks. I think they would still be considered patronage, but yes.
Yeah. So even somebody just coming out of Yale from a kinship network or patronage network, like would already think that same way. I mean, they already think that they know best on how to run the world, and we don't know anything. Like we don't know what we should do, and they know best. And the scary thing is, I don't feel like I know what to do, but I don't think they know what to do either. Like my sort of go-to is just leave people alone and let them be free. I mean, that's like,
yeah.
And they do know what to do. Like we do know what to do in our, like I could tell you what to do for my little, maybe my neighborhood or my county, or even to a bigger extent, maybe even my province, you know, or the province is pretty big. I don't know what the fuck's going up on the north half, but you know, between me and 500,000 other people, we do know everything about, you know.
Yeah, I'm talking more like from a global. I'm talking more from a complex global
it's like
situation.
A decentralization thing again, man. We can't have fucking people that don't know what the fuck they're talking about, don't know what the landscape looks like, don't know what the local problems are. Fucking making legislation. I mean, at the end of the day, if it's all any semblance of real, that's why the UK got the fuck out, right? This is just crazy. We got people who've never been to the fucking UK telling us what kind of. I heard a rumor it was all about fucking teapots, man. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was some sort of teapot they outlawed. It was a kind everyone already had. I don't know. This could be, you know.
No, well, it you know how many democracies were overthrown?
No agenda. I think it was a no agenda thing. These guys are usually pretty good.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't know if that specific situation is true. I just don't know. But there were multiple countries that were overthrown for bananas. I mean, that happened. It's essentially like, it's funny, but it's crazy because it's true. It's like what I often think about in these types of situations is think about like, oh, what legislation can we pass, and you know, whatever, what can be implemented, you know, oh, we should have term limits and everything, and all that stuff is great. But another layer down, I often think about the how a ban on the tea kettle could drive Britain. Oh my gosh. And this is the thing. This illustrates it perfectly, that it's all responding to incentives, and it's about what organizations are able to do, and it follows technology. Technological innovation and the changing technology over time allows the situation to change, the balance of power to change between different groups of people. And there are a lot of times in different eras of history where Elizabeth I, I've said this 3 times over the past week. Elizabeth I, she rejected farming technology in England because she knew the technology would destabilize the country. In the 1500s, the Chinese burned the largest fleet in history. They burned 2,000 ships because they decided they didn't need to go out to the rest of the world. They were the Middle Kingdom. They're just going to hang out and be themselves. And that was great. It worked really well until the British came with guns and sold them a bunch of opium and stuff. And it really is that technology changes the situation. The incentives stay the same. People and groups, they exist how they are already, especially these large social constructs like NGOs, the WEF, even governments like the US government, the Canadian government, the British government. They exist how they are. No single individual has that much control over them. But then the materialistic situation changes. The situation changes with what technology is available to them. And then suddenly that social construct is responding to that situation with new technology. And maybe that means like something as simple as
an e-transfer.
An e-transfer. Exactly. The ability to move money through electronics allows people to have much more control over this.
Exactly. Yeah. I was just going to say that the top, like you were talking about, the very, very top, right? The Rothschilds or whoever's up there. Now they can just push a button and send this money, this resource. There's a vehicle of influence that's never existed before like this. They can send it to all these different players, and then they can send it to all their little different players, and they can get out there, just like we talked about, in one of our latest shows about Soros funding only 500 or 50 million to a couple different organizations of TikTok influencers to basically just push against freedom, basically, and push their sort of leftist ideas. But this has never been able. I mean, imagine what they had to do before. They'd have to, horse and carriage. Like not too long ago, they'd have to horse and carriage gold or money or some influence with a letter physically across the fucking water to get to somebody.
Good at robbing trains, man. I wish I would be so good at robbing trains and shit. I would have been a great Indian outlaw bandit. I could just love that shit, man. I could get right into it.
So those
I could get a chance. What do you think? Do you think I get a chance, Sam, in my lifetime? Do you think
I hope so?
It seems like it could come back.
If everything collapses and that's where we get, I hope that you get your chance to rob trains again. I hope that it comes back. I hope that that's the type of dystopian future we have, is one where you get to rob trains. I really do.
So
that'd be awesome.
A steampunk thing where I'm still texting you on my fucking satellite thing, right? The cell networks are down, but I just got this satellite thing because maybe the satellite, I don't know. It works if I'm out hunting or the missus is out hiking and there's no service. You can send, I pay $20 a month and you can send 30 text messages and unlimited sort of, here's my location and I'm okay. Here's my location, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And but you can also send text messages with it, so it makes me wonder if
it's not Starlink.
I don't know if it's Iridium, the Iridium satellite network.
Wow.
So anyway, I don't know much about it. I haven't even got it yet. I just ordered it.
Good idea.
It'd be good to have, mostly because I do spend a lot of time in the backcountry where there's no service, where it'd be nice. And it'd be great in an emergency situation, but in my things, usually it's like, hey, I'm going to stay out another few hours. Don't freak out, or, little things like that. The location thing is a nice little add-on, but I can also just sort of picture this like steampunk, maybe dystopian, maybe not, future where everything sort of broke down and I'm riding a horse and using a bow and arrow, but I can still listen to all the stuff that was on my phone already. I'm listening to the same episodes of podcasts and some books and some music.
You got downloaded,
But I can also text anyone else who might have had a satellite phone that I know. So if you guys got one too, maybe we could be part of this dystopian Discord chat thing. We're hey man, we're just having a bonfire, and we rob some whites.
Hell yeah, that's exactly who I want to rob. I just I live up in New England. I'll just it's a bunch of weak liberal whites, my least favorite people in the world. I'll take everything from them. I don't care. But so that technology you're talking about before, you had to send a letter and a stagecoach over roads